So my name's Annabelle Cleland. I am the member for Euroa and I'm as a part of the Legislative Assembly at Parliament House. And before I was elected last November, so a year ago, I was an editor for Agricultural Masthead, and I have always been a journalist and a storyteller for regional Victoria with a particular passion for agriculture. I'm also a farmer, and we have a business producing products from our farm that we make as well. So, as a leader, I think I've learnt that it's really, really important to always bring your community with you. My background as a journalist, I always think that it's a wonderful opportunity to be a microphone for our community. So what people say in my community, it's a chance for me to then share it here. It's really important for me to be speaking on behalf of my community and be a voice for the people of the Euroa electorate, and not Parliament telling my community what it wants. I think is just making sure that you are reflective of the majority of your region and who you're representing, and also having an element of compassion wherever possible. My electorate spans over 13,000 square kilometres with lots of communities that span that whole area and 5 hospitals, and so it's really important that I get out everywhere and make sure that everyone's being listened to. I think it's just a great deal of listening. So I think they say you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, that you should always be listening twice as much as you're speaking. You always have to remain equal. There is no, with leadership, you're much better off bringing people on the journey than telling people what they need. I always say that I'm a microphone of my community, and what they say is what I echo back here in the Victorian Parliament. If there's a moment where I haven't brought my community on that journey and I'm telling them from something that's occurred at Parliament and they don't know the background to it, then they hold me accountable and they say, this is not reflective of our position. So how do I navigate differing positions within the community? I've got a bit of a philosophy of community first. As a former journalist, I often lack an individual position, and I often just interview as many people as possible. I often have a legislation in here and I have a short period of time which I'm able to speak on it, maybe less than a couple of weeks. And in that time, I often call all of those people in the community that have a position or will be impacted by that legislation. I kind of just still interview people to make sure that I reflect their views, and what I'm saying in here is truly reflective of my community. It's been a huge learning curve, because often you get some really, really passionate and emotive, combative emails or phone calls from a small group of people that don't always reflect the entire region. So it's my responsibility to go that level a bit deeper and keep interviewing. I try and keep well myself, sleep, eat well, exercise, just so that I'm not taking any of that feedback on personally. And I just know that it's an individual who cares deeply about a topic. And I also just, wherever possible, just be empathetic and compassionate to their views. When I do get a chance to speak on a topic, I always inject the personal stories. Everyone who I've ever spoken to, I'll use their names if they're comfortable with that, to truly know that this isn't a personal opinion, this is a representation of our region. And when a decision is made, I do speak to people, if it's against their position, to explain the background of how we had to get there and why that's important, and make sure every step of the way the community feels listened to. I think it can be sometimes a bit of an echo chamber in Parliament, where you think that what's being discussed here is really important to your local electorate, and often it's not. And so just keeping in touch. We have a great deal of time in our electorate, and I just make sure every single day I'm meeting as many people as possible who have a position that I have to vote on, or if there's something that's going to impact my region, making sure that my community is supportive of that position as well. There has been some really heated debate, and there's a huge weight that you carry with making a decision on behalf of 50,000 people. So I think it's important for us that we speak to everyone that would be impacted by that. And sometimes you might not be in agreement with their position, but you ultimately are there to represent them. And so it's really important that you listen. Often people think that, say, volunteering with Lions or Rotary is just a small sacrifice, and often they're the fabric of our communities. Those opportunities to give to our community just pays dividends so much, and it has a great deal of reward. I think also the personal benefit of that is improved mental health, kindness as well. I think you become a little bit more gentle when you understand and you devote yourself to serving other people. it's a wonderful life, and it has a huge amount of meaning. I have for young people aspiring to be an advocate or a leader, I would say do it. It's got the greatest amount of reward, and I think that you get to live a life of a lot more depth, a lot more meaning, a lot more purpose. My advocacy journey is quite unique. I think I had a really tough birth experience with my 4-year-old. And a part of that, I feel like I'm a very confident person, and I just felt quite voiceless. So I worked with the hospital and joined the hospital board, where I hope to recommend some improvements to the community and the patients' outcomes. It was so empowering for me to think that I could maybe be a storyteller for regional Victoria, in particular those people in my community. That's where the journey started, and I think it's just in its early days still. I absolutely love this position where people trust you with their stories and share their most vulnerable personal situations and use me as that conduit back to Parliament. It's a pretty powerful and it's an absolute privilege, yeah, personally or professionally, about leadership. I feel like my life here in the last year has been a broader spectrum. There is a lot greater reward, but there is a lot greater negativity or maybe sacrifices that come with that. I feel like you get to live this extraordinary life of great privilege where people trust you to share their stories. But a part of that does mean there's a little less time with your family, a little less time having personal hobbies or being in touch with your friends. But it is an extraordinary level of reward. You kind of get to do more in this 12 months than I had in my entire life beforehand, in terms of who I get to meet and these everyday heroes in our community doing these remarkable things that maybe I wouldn't have been able to know that without having this sort of great role of being the microphone of the Euroa electorate.